Hey Chevra. So tonight we're continuing with recovery in the Parsha. And tonight we're going to focus on the trait of dust and the trait of dirt. Now, famously, tradition holds that the four holy cities of the land of Israel, corresponding to the four holy letters of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name, correspond as well to the four elemental powers of organic existence: fire, water, air, and dust. Now, Yerushalayim, with its korbanos and its fervent prayer and its desire to elevate ourselves from the ground upwards like the emerging flames, corresponds to fire. Svas, with its perpetual dusk-like nature of floating within the clouds and the airiness that one begins to feel when they choose to breathe, is correspondent to air. The purifying waters of Tiberia, reminding us of the sky, reminding us of Tcheles, reminding us of redemption and purity, is Tiberia as water. And then when it comes to dust, when it comes to dirt, it's going to correspond to Chevron. Chevron is the place that is most associated with the ground. Chevron is chibor, it's a connection. It's when my feet hit the ground. And we know that when our feet hits the ground, we encounter what it means to be a human being. We are identified as holchim. We are identified as individuals who move, as individuals who walk, as opposed to celestial malachim, which are identified as creatures that stand. Meaning to say that the identifying and defining factor of what it means to human being is to have our feet planted on the ground and uprooted off the ground, planted on the ground and uprooted off the ground, which is the secret of Abraham's call of Lech Lecha. The first call to the Jew was to get up and move your feet, allow those feet to become dancing feet. And Afar, of all of the qualities that we can access through organic experience or our psychological posture, Afar is the one that is sometimes most familiar. We know that the Balatanya in the beginning of Sefer Atanya Kadisha quotes from Rav Chaim Vital and Shari Kedusha that the four elements are associated with four particular positive character traits and four negative character traits. And Afar, when it comes to the negative aspect of things, is oriented towards that drive towards inactivity, towards the death of things, to what Freud referred to as the thanatos drive. After Freud had assumed that what drives the human being is eros, is the desire to create and to connect, he came in contact with the secondary truth, which was the thanatos, the drive towards death, the drive towards inactivity, that self-destructive tendency of everything reverting back to its organic state, which is disconnection, disunity, and being rooted in the dust. Dust leads one to apathy, dust leads one to inactivity, dust leads one to a feeling of the inability to get up, the inability to start again. It leads one to the feeling of the heaviness of what has already happened and the heaviness of what we consider when we think about what might happen in the future. Dust is where all things go to die. And the dust, Rabbi Chia says in the introduction to the Zohar HaKadosh, that Afra, 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 dust, dust, how brazen are you? How miserable are you that you take all that is beautiful in this world and you swallow it up into yourself? You allow it to die down into the abysmal depths of inactivity and absence. But to the very same point, while we know that these attributes are negative and harsh to contemplate, the impoverishment of the dust is spit upon, it's spat upon, it's walked upon, and it's disregarded. But at the end of the day, the dust of the Zohar Kadosh is going to teach us, and we're going to know this intuitively well from the secrets of recovery. The dust is not only the lowest expression of existence, but it's also the site in which everything is transformed to the better. And not only is it the lowest, but it also represents the access point to the highest, as it typically operates in the realm of recovery, in the realm of spirituality, in the realm of Pnimiyas HaTorah. That which appears to be lowest and most impoverished is in truth going to be highest and the richest. And so too when it comes to Afar. The Zohar HaKadosh says that yes, Afar is brazen, yes, Afar swallows all things, but at the same point, Afra is manadakala. Afra is the lot of all individuals. Afar, the dusted nature of ourselves, the fact that in the end of the day, I am nothing but afar. I am nothing but that which regresses into nothingness. My selfhood, my ego, my attempt to lay my mark on existence, my attempt to continue to gain some sturdy ground in which I can create an idol for myself, like the lost idols of Ozymandias who find themselves covered over by the dust and the sand of time. Afar comes and it laughs at the human attempt. Afar comes to say that everything built will revert back to this, will revert back to nothingness. And while we must free that notion from its negativity and the existential kind of fashion of being sad as a result of something like this, and we have to uncover the empowering secret that rests at the heart of Afar, because Afar is the possibility of beginning again. Afar is the possibility of recognizing that everything is okay, and that which was built fell apart, but that means I could build again. And that which is attempted might struggle, but it means that I can attempt again. Afar, yes, it represents the lack of a lasting quality to our efforts, but at the very same point, it's that very lack of continuity that gives us the ability to begin again and again and again and again and again each and every time. It's the secret of bittul. It's the secret of self-nullification. Like Avram Avinu was able to say, Anoichi afar ve'efer, I am nothing but the dust. Avram Avinu was not negating himself in a negative language. Avram Avinu was not utilizing negative speech to minimize himself. Avram Avinu was stating an ontological reality of what it means to be connected to Nishmas Yisrael, to connect to our spiritual source and vitality that pulsates within us at every moment. Anoichi Afar ve'efer means that I am nothing, Ribono Shel Olam, not because I'm a lowercase nothing, but because you are a capital N nothing, Ribono Shel Olam. You are everything. And if you are everything, I am nothing but part of that everything, which means that my own sense of self is nothing. I have to allow my sense of self and my possessional attitude and my desire to gain and to identify and to have that proper name, as opposed to living in that secret of anonymity. I have to allow Afar to do its work on all of those drives, not to stop the activity of trying to make a name for ourselves or trying to move forward, et cetera, et cetera. All of that is fundamental, as we're going to see in the upcoming Parshios. But before we engage in the process of nation building, of self-building, of identification of self, we first have to go through that space of Afar. We have to first and foremost recognize that I am but dust, not in a negative way, but in an affirming way, that this is not me. I am a shliach of the Ribono Shel Olam, like the tzaddikim are perpetually teaching us. And when a person allows themselves and their selfhood to kind of melt into that anonymity of dust, which is the guiding spiritual principle behind all that is said and done, the willingness to let go of the need for a proper name and to open myself up to the Afar of it all, to the Afar, the Manakula, I will then come to understand the secret of how everything emerges out of that Afar. Afar represents the disintegration of what I previously held absolutely certain as being fully integrated, which means to say that we live our lives with certain preconceived notions, we live our lives with certain expectations, we live our lives with certain demands, all of which might be all too human, but all of which go directly against the principle of acceptance being the answer to all of my problems today. It is specifically in the lack of possession. It is specifically in the being rather than the doing, in the attempt to settle down rather than to acquire and to grow, that a person is going to encounter their true selves. And that secret spot of acceptance, where I'm no longer trying to manipulate or control or form the clay of reality, but rather I am gazing at the very dust of it all, the very dirt of it all, the very ashes of it all, the Afar, the Efer, the fact that nothing is nothing because only HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everything. And in the light of everything, everything else is nothing. Until we're able to include that nothingness into the secret of everything and realize that the Afar is simply beckoning us to recognize the light of Bittul, to negate myself in the eyes of the infinite and to allow myself to become a receptacle, to become a messenger who can now act through and with a power greater than myself. I am no longer limited in my capacity because I am banking myself and I am relying myself and I'm rooting myself and I am laying myself down at the feet of that which is infinite. Afar represents the possibility of growth. It is where all things emerge from. It is where all birth comes from. It is where expansion comes from. But at the very same point, as Rabbi Nachman said, it's stepped upon and it's spit upon, which is why when we try and cultivate a sense of self, Rabbi Nachman says, we say in Tefillah that v'nafshi ka'afar l'chol tihiyah, that my soul should be like dust. What does it mean like dust? Says Rabbi Nachman that just as the dust is walked upon and it's negated and it is not valued for its individual name and it does not get the applause that it deserves because all the applause in the world is not enough to give it what it deserves, it accepts it. It's silent in the face of it, not passive in the sense that I deserve this because I'm bad, but it's an active passivity. It's a willingness to engage in the path of acceptance, to not be moved, to not be bothered by the things that take place because it's not about me and nor is it about the other person. It's about my higher power ultimately in the end of the day. And when I own that place, I can access the point of nafshi ka'afar l'chol tihiyah, that in spite of the fact that I'm being walked upon and I'm owning and engaging in the art of silence and the secret spiritual principle of anonymity, of the Afar the Manakula, that dust which has no name, that dirt which has no name, at the very same time, I am giving vitality to all things. I am allowing everything to be formed out of me. I am allowing the beautiful diamonds to be mined out of me. I am allowing all of the buildings and the attempts to build the world and the self through my experiences. So on the one hand, it's a willingness of self-nullification like the Afar. On the other hand, it's the ownership over that possibility of continuously giving and giving and giving, not in a codependent way, but rather by way of openness. The Afar is open, like Avram Avinu is open. The Afar is what happens when a person is suddenly confronted with a trauma. When the trauma disrupts what we had previously built, we're reminded once again of Anoichi Afar ve'efer, which is why we mark our foreheads with Afar ve'efer when it comes to the Zikaron and the memory of the destruction of the temple. Because what the Afar reminds me of, what the dust and the dirt reminds me of, is ultimately that what I thought I had, I don't have. It doesn't mean that I'll never have anything. It just means that Hashem is everything. And the only time I'll have anything is when I access that everything. But if I think I have something of my own, then I have absolutely nothing. And Avram Avinu was suddenly reminded of that. Not that Avram Avinu needed to be reminded, but because the world needed to understand the secret, which is why after the sudden death of Sarah Imenu, the traumatic departure of Sarah, in the response to the trauma of the Akedah, the first thing that Avram does is he goes to Hebron. He goes to find that his chabris. He goes to find that secret connection of the feet on the ground and a willingness to live like the Afar, the willingness to recognize that I don't know, I didn't know, and I'll never know. I didn't know, I don't know, and I'll never know. I didn't know, I don't know, and I'll never know. I'm like the Afar, nafshi ka'afar l'chol tihiyah, that I allow my soul to become like Afar for everything to happen. And it's specifically in that place, in the place of Afar, in the ear of Afar, in that town of Hebron, of his chabras, of where we come to find disconnection, we begin to find connection. Avram Avinu meets Ephron Hachiti. Ephron, again, is Melashon Afar, representing that this town was the moment where we were going to encounter the dusty nature of all things and how things descend down into disparity. But what Avram Avinu found was Marasa Machpelah. What Avram Avinu found was the entry into Gan Eden. What Avram Avinu found was the secret of the birth of a nation that was going to be as innumerable as the dust and the granules of dirt of the ground. It was the secret of Afar the Manakula, the secret that Afar, that Malchus, in spite of the fact that it appears so low, in spite of the fact that all of my experiences, which appear so low, ultimately they're rooted in the highest of places. Nafshi ka'afar l'chol tihiyah. Afar, the lowest part of the self, is in truth the incubator of Kol, where everything is going to emerge. And it's specifically there that Avram comes to be maspid on Sarah, where he comes to give the eulogy and to bury his wife, to bury that reaction to the fact that I thought I knew and I didn't know. I thought I knew and I didn't know. And to engage in the path of acceptance, not that passivity without power, but rather the power that rests within passivity. It's a power at the heart of powerlessness. It's the willingness to be nothing. And by being nothing, I become the representation of everything. And it's specifically there where growth is going to come to. So when we engage in our continued paths of recovery and we engage in our continued paths of mining the fields, the irreducibly infinite fields of the Torah for insight into our daily lives, into our practical lives, particular lives, as well as collective lives, let us be like the dust, let us be like the dirt, let us be that which is without name, that which is anonymous, that which does not need to be named because it's contained within the name of all things, which is the Shem Havaya of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, b'chvaydo v'atzmo kavyachol. And when we're able to be zoichet to these ors, when we're able to connect to the dust, to connect to the afar, we begin to understand the secret of pe'er. We begin to understand the secret beautification that comes specifically by way of engaging with my nothing, by way of emptying myself out in order to be filled with the emergent light of the infinite. This is the secret of Maras Machpelah. This is the secret of Hebron, where the Jews go to connect to the Avos, to connect to that light of Bittul, to connect to that place of Afar de Manakula, where I have nothing other than the Afar, and the Afar is nothing other than me. And it's specifically there where the infinite potential of growth comes from. Not because I am infinite, God forbid. The only thing infinite is God. But when I own my own most finitude, when I come in contact with the limitations of my knowledge, when I own that deep realization of I didn't know, I don't know, and I'm not going to know, it's specifically there where the dust is transformed into an entry point into Gan Eden. It's specifically there that I begin to uncover the secret of how I take that afar and I build it, and I build stones, and I build houses, and I build the Beis HaMikdash out of it. And this is the secret of Avram Avinu coming to mourn his wife Sarah, the secret of Avram Avinu coming to mourn the departure of Ruach HaKodesh, of Sarah, Avram Avinu coming to mourn the expected nature of things, understanding fully that laugh of Sarah that reminds him every day, the light of Yitzchak, the remainder of Yitzchak is that we didn't know, we don't know, and we will never know. But ultimately, beyond knowledge is the faith that everything is going to grow and everything is good and everything will continue to grow. And that's the secret of the Afar Be'ezras Hashem, and that's the secret of Chayei Sarah, connecting to the life of Sarah. It's a story of Sarah's death, but nevertheless, it's the secret of her life because it's specifically at that point of powerlessness, at that low point of the despair and all possibility of growth, that growth is going to be revealed. Be'ezras Hashem.